Привет всем! Хочу сообщить, что в феврале исполнилось 5 лет созданному мной интеллектуальному клубу Transatlantic Connections. А в этой программе я хочу познакомить вас с Энтони Скарамуччи, бизнесменом, бывшим другом Трампа и его пресс-секретарем в первой каденции. Мало кто из приближенных знает Трампа так хорошо, как Scaramucci. Он уже более года проводит видеопрограммы, показывающие реальную суть его бывшего босса. Конечно, рискует жизнью. Я давно собираю материалы для того, чтобы сделать специальную программу про Энтони Скарамуччи, потому что 10 лет слежу за его деятельностью, и мне очень нравятся такие эксцентричные политики. Энтони в 2015 году активно участвовал в продвижении Трампа в Белый дом. Scaramucci – крупный спонсор республиканской партии, бывший банкир Goldman Sachs и основатель инвестиционной компании SkyBridge Capital. Он был советником в команде Трампа по переходу его на пост президента в 2016 году. До своего назначения в Белый дом Энтони был старшим вице-президентом и главным стратегическим директором экспортно-импортного банка при агентстве правительства США. Scaramucci учился в колледже и получил степень бакалавра искусств. В дальнейшем учился юриспруденции и экономике, получил степень доктора экономики в университете Тафтса, а также степень доктора юридических наук в Гарвардском университете, школа права. В то время там учились будущий президент Барак Обама, будущий заместитель генерального прокурора Розенштейн, а также будущий судья Верховного суда Нил Горсач. Scaramucci считает, что время, проведенное в Гарвардской школе права, стали для него трамплином его карьеры. Connections. А сейчас по сути этой программы. Последний месяц Энтони проводит много времени в Европе, дает там интервью, так как европейцам очень важно знать, какой еще трюк может сотворить Трамп. Сейчас вы увидите его интервью голландской телевизионной компании, которая прошла 9 марта. Scaramucci расскажет о сегодняшней ситуации в Америке и возможных последствиях правления Трампа для остального мира. Название такое: «Как поживает Америка после 7 недель правления Дональда Трампа».
Anthony Scaramucci, welcome to our show. Thank you for making the time.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
How dangerous is this moment in time after 7 weeks of Donald Trump in office?
Well, I think it's very dangerous on a number of different reasons because he is ripping up the post-World War II order. He wants to do things to the United States from an economic perspective that are not realistic.
Ну и перед тем, как продолжить эту программу, для того, чтобы вы лучше понимали, кто такой Scaramucci, рассказываю. 21 июля 2017 года он был назначен Трампом на должность директора по коммуникациям. Несмотря на возражение пресс-секретаря Шона Спайсера, который подал в отставку в знак протеста, и главы администрации президента Райса Прибуса. Директор по коммуникациям в аппарате Белого дома курирует всю публичную информационно-пропагандистскую политику американской администрации. Итак, бывший финансист Уолл-стрит Энтони Scaramucci проработал в Белом доме всего лишь 10 дней. Назначение Муччи 21 июля вызвало большие перестановки в Белом доме Трампа. Глава аппарата Райнс Прибус и пресс-секретарь Шон Спайсер оба покинули свои посты. Затем, всего через неделю после назначения, в разговоре с репортером, Scaramucci начал резко высказываться против Прибуса, назвав его параноидальным шизофреником. Я тоже согласен. В этом же телефонном разговоре он также оскорбил с нецензурной бранью главного стратега Стива Беннона. Громадный скандал. Scaramucci обвинил идеолога-мага Беннона в привлечении внимания средств массовой информации конкретно к своей личности. Он сказал: «Я не Стив Беннон, я не пытаюсь сосать свой собственный член». И добавил: «Я не пытаюсь построить свой собственный бренд на чертовой силе президента. Я здесь, чтобы служить стране, Америке». Scaramucci позже пожалел и написал в Твиттере о том, что жесткий язык – это не самое правильное применение в политике. Но ущерб уже был нанесен, и 31 июля, то есть через 10 дней, он был уволен лично Трампом. И в довершении всего, В день его увольнения выяснилось, что он был ошибочно объявлен мертвым в справочнике выпусков Гарвардского университета юридической школы. Потом они извинились и сказали, что ошибка будет исправлена, так как он закончил юридический факультет Гарвардского университета в 1989 году. Те, кто меня хорошо знают, теперь понимают, почему мне нравится Scaramucci. Да я сам такой. А теперь внимательно слушайте, о чем он говорит и о чем он предупреждает. Итак, интервью.
Scaramucci, welcome to our show. Thank you for making the time.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
How dangerous is this moment in time after 7 weeks of Donald Trump in office?
Well, I think it's very dangerous on a number of different reasons because he is ripping up the post-World War II order. He wants to do things to the United States from an economic perspective that are not realistic. And they're moving in a way that doesn't understand that everything is interconnected. You know, if they think of the economy like your body, if we're operating on a certain part of your body, it does have stress and impact on other parts of your body. And so what he's doing with the tariffs, as an example, is going to hurt the country. It's going to hurt lower and middle income people. It's a regressive form of taxation, or to quote Warren Buffett, in addition to being a regressive form of taxation, it's an act of war.
So Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada said he means it. He means when he says that Canada should be the 51st state of the United States. Do you think that Donald Trump has a serious plan to take over Canada, for example?
I think you have to take him seriously. I'm not one of these people that pretends otherwise. You know, I think what happens to people is you say something like, well, he's going to take Greenland, to use his own quote that he gave in a speech last night, one way or another, I'm taking Greenland. So if you're observing that, you'd have to say, well, what does he mean by that? That could mean some type of military intervention in Greenland. He's decapitated different areas of the government and installed people that are incredibly loyal to him and not necessarily competent in their jobs, but they're serious yes men or serious yes women as it relates to him. So you just have to tell me how deep that goes and how far it goes. So I think you have to take him seriously. I think you have to take a position that there's a middle, there's no, for me, there were three views when he started. When you interviewed me in November, there were three views. One was an optimistic view, one was a middle of the road view, and one was an apocalyptic view. The optimistic view is off the table. He's made that very clear. He wants to disengage the United States from its allies. He wants to side with people like Vladimir Putin. He wants to create a sphere of influence for the United States. It's very different than it was from the Second World War to today. And I think when you're listening to him, I think he's telling you, I want to control Canada. I want to control Greenland, because we can make an argument that's part of North America. And I will likely want to have a big say and big influence in the Western hemisphere of the world. As it relates to these other areas of the world, let's let Vladimir Putin have his say in his part of Eurasia and his say as it relates to Eastern Europe. And let's take it to an extreme just so we can understand the danger. And then China, that would be okay for Taiwan, and even at some point possibly Australia. You can control that area of the world.
But this is apocalyptic, what you're describing. Now,
that's the apocalyptic view. What Trump is doing is un-American, and I would make one more statement. I think it's an important statement. The most un-American thing I have seen him do in the last 7 weeks is the berating and the rebuking of President Zelensky in the Oval Office. And so let me just set the scene for you. I'm living in a homeowners association. I live in the mansion. You have a smaller house down the block. There's an arsonist setting your house on fire. You call me and you say, I need help. Can you pass me your garden hose? I got to put that fire out in the house, and we've got to stop the arsonist because he's going to set other houses on fire. I invite you into my living room to discuss this with you, and then I berate you in front of the national and international television. So that to me is the most un-American thing that you could do. He said something about cards. You don't have the cards. He's trying to flip the card table over, and he's trying to restate the rules of the road. And this is not American as defined by the 250-year history of America. And we have to explain that. We have to rebut him, and we have to try to convince the American people that this is the wrong way to go as it relates to the vision of America.
Is this gangster rule coming out of the Oval Office? And also, is it inspired or even dictated by President Putin in Moscow?
If I were Vladimir Putin, what would I want in the first 7 weeks of an American presidency? Well, I would give Donald Trump a grade of 100% if I was coming out of the Kremlin. But I think Trump is actually worrying the Russians as well, by the way. I'll give you something counterintuitive and contrarian to think about. He's so unpredictable, and he's running the thing with an element of reality television. And of course, when you're in a reality television show, you set up conflict. And so he's been running a studio out of the Oval Office where he's taking unending questions from journalists, and he's got Keir Starmer in there trying to be lovey-dovey, and Macron trying to be trying to be lovey-dovey, and then he's there to he put Zelensky in a crossfire, and he ambushed Zelensky. That was a total ambush.
It was a plan.
No question. No question. Yeah, they want to weaken Zelensky. So
do they want to weaken him or get him out of office? Do they want to get rid of him?
Well, weaken him and eventually get him out of office. I mean, Putin has told people he wants Zelensky out of office. Zelensky turned out to be a way tougher character. Let's not revise history. February of 2022, the expectation was that Putin, to use Zelensky's word, 3 days he'd be in Kiev, and Zelensky would have sought exile somewhere. But you have to think about the history here. You have to think about the history of Ukraine, the history of Russia. You have to think about the 1994 agreement to give up the nuclear weapons in Ukraine, and you have to think about the West's commitment to the security of Ukraine, and then again, you have to think about the American people over the last 80 years. What was the message from American presidents to this continent over the last 80 years? We are here to protect you. We are here to put down the internecine conflicts. We are here as a security umbrella alongside of our counterparts in NATO to provide space for the free world.
That ended. Did it end now?
He wants to end it. You see, I actually think Donald Trump has done something that will take maybe even a generation to repair. Because if I'm a European leader and I trusted the United States, the security umbrella of the United States, the vision that the United States had for the free world, and you've now put a leader in place that doesn't want that, that means there's a lot of people inside the United States that don't understand the positive benefits of that policy for themselves in the United States.
Is it wise for Europe to kiss up to Donald Trump, like Starmer and Macron, and also the Secretary General of the NATO are doing at this time, to get Zelensky back into the Oval Office and make a deal?
I don't think so, and I don't even think it matters. I mean, it will matter for that press cycle. I'm sure Prime Minister Starmer's popularity went up. He handled himself deftly. President Macron handled himself deftly, but I don't really think it matters. There's a very broad agenda that Trump and his administration have, President Trump and his administration, and so therefore it doesn't really matter. I think the Europeans would be better at becoming more independent from the United States and more integrated with each other. And I think that if you want to hurt Donald Trump, diminish the influence of the United States on this continent, because you'll send a message to people in the United States that they are not as needed as they once were. And I think that integration has really helped the United States.
In November, in our interview, you called Trump a fascist. Would you repeat that word today?
Well, you tell me. He won't call him a fascist, but I know he's a fascist. And just go through what he's doing. But I also know him behind the scenes. I know that he wants uniformity of applause when he walks on a stage. I know he wants zero dissent. A good political leader that believes in a democracy wants dissent. They want the argument. Okay, the founding fathers that put that document together, sir, they wanted the compromise. They wanted the inertia of the government. They wanted to prevent a tyranny.
And he doesn't.
He definitely does not.
And
by the way, take a look at what he's doing. You tell me, am I closer to the truth 7 weeks into his presidency than I was in November? I know the guy. I know what he's capable of, and I know the people that are organized with him now. The people that he was organized with in the first term were not that.
You were one of them.
I was one of them.
Do you regret it that you were working for him?
Of course. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I think, I think it helped me. I think me working for him and me getting famously fired like that gave me a platform to explain the danger of him.
So the people who
I
are working
regret
with
it,
him
but I
now,
also think there's a silver lining to it.
yeah, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, the people who are working with him now, are they more dangerous than the people he worked with in his first presidency?
Way more dangerous.
What would be your advice to the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, who now has to deal with Trump and basically told Zelensky, make peace with Trump. You made a little mistake there, go back and make a peace deal.
Well, I think that's good advice in the short term, but I think he has to have a two-pronged strategy. Strategy number one is he's got to get with his contemporaries in NATO, the people that are part of the alliance, and say that there's a chance here over a 4-year period, if not longer, that we may have to go it alone without the United States.
How dangerous is it for you to speak out on all these topics?
I think it's dangerous. I think if I were a politician, it would be extremely dangerous. I think I'm a political commentator, and so there's still space for me in the country. But listen, he's creating a chilling effect on free speech in our country, which is great irony because he has J.D. Vance giving a speech at the Munich Security Conference deriding the free speech laws in Europe, most of Europe. And yet in the United States, they're having a chilling effect on free speech. So yeah, it's dangerous.
Are there,
I don't care though.
You don't care. Are there personal threats to your life in the U.S.?
There have been, yes.
Do you have any protection?
I do.
Yeah. The new director of the FBI, Patel, he's not a friend of yours. You're on his hit list, basically.
Yeah, I'm moving up the list. Biden kept pardoning everybody, so he's, through the pardons, I've probably gone up the list.
But it's not a laughing matter, is it? Because do you get any protection of the FBI if you need it?
No, unfortunately, all of that stuff has gone away, but
since President Trump is in office.
Yeah, I think he took Esper's. I didn't have a detail, but I think the relationships with the FBI are going to be altered by Kash Patel. But all of the details of people that spoke out against Donald Trump have been removed, and so that's never happened before. By the way, Anthony Fauci, Mark
doctor,
Esper.
Yeah. When you worked with him in 2015 and 16, could you have ever imagined that this would be the outcome, that that Donald Trump would develop like he is now?
No, I didn't see it. I mean, there are other people. If people want to be critical of me, they say, well, he had these types of tendencies, you should have seen it, and this is a stain on your legacy that you worked with him. I have to accept that, but I didn't see it. And remember, this is a guy that went to Elton John's wedding. This is a guy that started out as a Democrat. This is a guy that was pro-choice as it related to the abortion issue in the United States.
Why do people, billionaires, very powerful people like Jeff Bezos of Amazon and Mark Zuckerberg of Meta, now come back to Trump while they were very critical and now work with him, give him money, and want to be his best friend?
Well, look at the Krupp family in Nazi Germany. Look at the different families. When you have that level of wealth, and you have a tendency to be transactional, less principled. And those people are making a decision. They've got great lives and great yachts and great footprints of wealth, and they don't want their companies broken up by the Department of Justice through antitrust, and they don't want their families threatened. And so they've made a decision of capitulation to him. Bezos has taken it very far. He had a tagline on the Washington Post, "The democracy dies in darkness." He's now switched the editorial programming of the Washington Post to be right-leaning. So I think they've done this to protect themselves, and I think it's an expedient thing to do, but it's understandable. I'm not sitting here criticizing them. You have to make a decision in a situation like this. Are you going to stick to your principles and you're going to explain what is actually going on and see if you can stop what is going on, or you can capitulate to it? And I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood, blue-collar family members. My dad served in the U.S. Army. My two uncles fought in the Second World War. And I think it's just very important. I've lived an amazing life. I've lived an undeserved life in America. I've lived many aspects of the American dream, became financially independent, had an opportunity to work in the White House, and I love my country. And I love the principles that this country has abided by over the last 80 years, and I think it's important to re-articulate those principles, restate those principles to people, even if it creates some level of personal danger or even if it creates some level of retribution from the American president. Think about how un-American that is. He's a very dangerous guy, and we gotta tell people why so that we can stop him.
Anthony Scaramucci, it's not a nice message that you're bringing here, but thank you very much for coming to Buitenhof.
Well, I mean, we got to be optimistic. I mean, we have to talk about this to prevent it from happening.
Каждый день мне в Фейсбуке задают вопросы. Как там у вас в Америке? Ну вот вы видите как. Это все не шутки. Пишите, обязательно пишите.